My name is Violet Spencer. I'm 25 years old, and last month, my grandmother handed me a sealed envelope that destroyed everything I believed about my family. Before I tell you about the inheritance that changed my life, please drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing where you guys are watching from. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, the engine idling just to keep the heater running against the chill of the Connecticut evening. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see the glow of my parents' house, the colonial mansion I grew up in. It looked warm, inviting, perfect. A lie. Inside that house, 50 people were currently toasting my brother, Lucas. They were drinking expensive champagne, laughing, and celebrating his MBA graduation. The driveway was packed with luxury cars, Mercedes, Range Rovers, and right in the center, the brand new Ferrari Purosang my father had just leased for Lucas. Me? I was sitting in the dark in a car that smelled like old coffee and anxiety, clutching a thick cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. Just an hour ago, I had been inside. I had been invisible. It was my birthday, too. Today. 25 years old. But there was no banner for me. No cake. No toast. Just a list of chores my mother had shoved into my hand the moment I walked through the door. Make sure the caterers don't scrape the walls, she'd said, not even making eye contact. But then, Grandma Eleanor had found me. I need you to picture this woman. She's 82, frail, sitting in a wheelchair, but her eyes. Her eyes are sharp as diamonds. She's the only person in that entire bloodline who ever looked at me and actually saw me. She had wheeled herself over to where I was standing by the rose bushes, hiding from the guests. She reached out, her skin like paper over fragile bones, and pulled me down close. "Violet," she whispered, her voice raspy but fierce. "It's time." She pulled this envelope out of her cardigan. It felt heavy. Heavier than paper should feel. "Don't open this inside," she hissed, glancing toward the patio where my father was holding court. "Do not let them see it. Take it to your car. Drive away. Read it alone." "Grandma, what is this?" I asked, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. "The truth," she said. "And your future." So here I was. Sitting in my car. The wax seal on the back of the envelope had a strange symbol I didn't recognize, a pair of scales. I took a deep breath, hooked my fingernail under the wax and cracked it open. The sound was loud in the quiet car. I slid the contents out. There were 3 things. The first was a handwritten letter on lavender stationery. I recognized the scent immediately, Grandma's perfume. Old lace and lavender. The second was a birth certificate. The third was a legal document, thick and bound with a blue cover, titled Irrevocable Living Trust. I picked up the letter first. My hands were trembling so badly, I had to rest them on the steering wheel to read. "My dearest Violet," it began. "If you are reading this, then you have survived 25 years of lies. I am so sorry I couldn't protect you sooner. Your father is a man who builds his castle on sand, and he has used you as a stepping stone." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "They told you that you were adopted in spirit. They told you that you didn't belong. They lied." I froze. Adopted in spirit. That phrase. It had been the soundtrack of my life. The excuse for every missed birthday, every cold shoulder, every time Lucas got the gold and I got the dust. I dropped the letter and grabbed the birth certificate. I scanned it frantically, looking for the words adopted or amended. Nothing. Mother, Margaret Louise Spencer. Father, Richard James Spencer. Child, Violet Marie Spencer. I read it again. And again. I traced the raised seal of the state of Connecticut with my thumb. It was real. I wasn't adopted. I wasn't some charity case they had taken in. I was their biological daughter. The realization hit me like a physical punch to the gut. I gasped, air rushing into my lungs. Why? Why lie about that? Why tell your own child they aren't fully yours? I picked up the third document. The trust. I'm an accountant. I deal with numbers and contracts all day long. I know what an irrevocable trust is. It's a vault. Once it's locked, it's locked. I flipped to the Schedule of Assets page. Asset 1, residential property located at 47 Maple Grove Lane, Greenwich, CT. Asset 2, cash holdings in First National Bank. Balance, $340,000. I stared at the address. 47 Maple Grove Lane. I looked up through the windshield at the house in front of me. The house where my parents lived. The house where Lucas was currently popping bottles of Dom Perignon. The house my father claimed he built with his own sweat and blood. I looked back at the document. Grantor, Eleanor and Mitchell. Beneficiary, Violet Marie Spencer. Condition, full control of assets to transfer upon beneficiary's 25th birthday. The world stopped spinning. My parents didn't own the house. Grandma did. And as of midnight last night, I did. A knock on my car window made me jump so hard I nearly dropped the papers. I looked up. It was my cousin Jessica. She was peering in, a glass of wine in her hand, a confused look on her face. Violet. What are you doing out here? Your dad is about to make a speech. I shoved the papers under my seat, my heart racing like a trapped bird. I rolled down the window just a crack. I'm not feeling well, Jess, I lied, my voice shaking. Come on, she said, rolling her eyes. Don't be dramatic. Uncle Richard wants a family photo. Well, a photo with Lucas, but you should probably be in the background or something. The casual cruelty of it. Be in the background or something. I looked at the house again. I looked at the hidden papers under my seat. I'll be right there, I said. I rolled up the window. I didn't go inside. Instead, I put the car in reverse. I needed to understand. I needed to know why. And I needed to know how I was going to survive what was coming next. Because if my father found out I held the deed to the roof over his head, he wouldn't just be angry. He would be dangerous. I drove away into the night, leaving the party behind. But I wasn't leaving the fight. I was just getting started. To understand why I didn't just turn the car around and scream the truth at them right then and there, you have to understand the phrase, adopted in spirit. It sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? Spiritual. Kind. It wasn't. It was a weapon. I first heard it when I was 8 years old. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were taco nights, the only meal we ate together as a family. I had asked a simple question. Why does Lucas have the big room with the balcony, and I have the room by the attic stairs? Lucas was 10. He smirked at me across the table, cheese dripping from his taco. My father didn't even look up from his meal. He cut his steak with surgical precision. Because, Violet, he said, his voice flat, Lucas is the legacy. You are adopted in spirit. What does that mean? I asked. It means, my mother chimed in, smiling that tight, anxious smile of hers, that we chose to keep you in our hearts, even if you don't fit the mold of this family like Lucas does. You should be grateful we give you a home at all. I was 8. I didn't understand the logic, but I felt the sting. It meant I was a guest. A permanent, tolerated guest in my own home. From that day on, the divide was absolute. Let's talk about my 16th birthday. That's a milestone, right? Sweet 16. For Lucas's 16th, 2 years prior, my parents rented out the local country club. There was a DJ, a chocolate fountain, and the highlight of the night, my father blindfolded Lucas and led him to the driveway. A brand new, cherry red Porsche 911 was waiting there with a giant white bow. I remember watching Lucas jump into the driver's seat, revving the engine while everyone cheered. My father looked at him with tears of pride in his eyes. "That's my boy," he kept saying. "That's the Spencer heir." When my 16th birthday rolled around, I woke up expecting something. Maybe not a Porsche but a party. A dinner? I came downstairs to find the kitchen empty. My parents had already left for work. There was a note on the counter, leftover lasagna in the fridge. "Happy birthday." That night, Dad came home late. He tossed a plastic bag from the grocery store onto the table. Bakery was closed, he grunted. Inside was a generic vanilla sheet cake from Costco. The icing was cracked. And the name written in blue gel was Valerie. "It says Valerie," I whispered. "Close enough," Dad said, loosening his tie. "Don't be ungrateful. Do you know how much taxes are this year?" My present was a book. How to budget for your future. "Since you won't have the same safety net as Lucas," my father said, pouring himself a scotch, "you better learn to count your pennies." That was the night I stopped crying. I realized tears were a currency my parents didn't accept. Then came college. The college fund was a sacred topic in our house. Whenever Lucas got a C on his report card, Dad would say, "Don't worry, son, your future is secured." When I got into a top-tier university with straight A's, I brought the acceptance letter to dinner. "That's great, Violet," Mom said, looking at her salad. "But you know we can't cover that tuition." "But the college fund?" I asked. Dad laughed. A short, barking sound. "That's for Lucas. He's going to business school. He needs the network. You're smart. You'll figure it out. Get a loan." So I did. I worked 2 jobs. I waited tables at a diner from 6 p.m. to midnight, and on weekends I tutored rich kids like Lucas, who were too lazy to do their own math homework. I graduated with honors and $47,000 in student loan debt. Lucas graduated with a 2.5 GPA, 0 debt, and a graduation gift of a month-long trip to Italy. Through all of this, there was only one person who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. Grandma Eleanor. She lived in the in-law suite on the ground floor. By the time I was in high school, her arthritis was bad, and she spent most of her days in her wheelchair looking out at the garden. My father treated her like a nuisance. He'd roll his eyes when she asked for tea. He'd talk about her as if she wasn't in the room. When the old bat kicks the bucket, he'd say to Mom, "We can finally renovate that wing into a game room." But Grandma saw everything. Every year on my birthday, my real birthday, I'd find a lavender envelope tucked under my pillow or hidden in my backpack. Inside, there was never money. She had no access to cash. Dad controlled her accounts, or so he thought. But there were words. "Remember who you are, my darling. Patience is a weapon. The truth always surfaces." I used to think she was just being senile. Just a sweet old lady trying to make me feel better about being the unwanted child. I didn't know she was playing the long game. I didn't know she was watching my father strut around her house, driving cars bought with her money, treating her granddaughter like a servant, and silently plotting his destruction. She waited. She waited until I was 25. The age of legal adulthood in the trust. The age where I couldn't be manipulated, where custody wasn't an issue, where I was a grown woman with a degree in accounting who knew how to spot a lie in a ledger. Driving away from the party that night, with the trust document on the passenger seat, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was rage. It was the rage of the 8-year-old girl told she was adopted in spirit. It was the rage of the 16-year-old blowing out candles on a Valerie cake. It was the rage of the college student scrubbing grease off diner tables while her brother posted selfies from Rome. My phone buzzed on the console. A text from Mom. Where are you? Dad is asking why the trash hasn't been taken out. Get back here. I looked at the text. I looked at the trust. I didn't reply. I kept driving. The past was over. The storm was about to begin. Let's go back to the party itself. I need you to see the moment the bridge finally burned. I had arrived at the house around noon, 5 hours before the guests. Mom had texted me, family celebration this Saturday. Don't be late. I thought, foolishly, that maybe this year would be different. Maybe because it was my 25th, a quarter century, they would acknowledge me. I pulled my Honda into the side street because Dad didn't like eyesores in the driveway. When I walked in, the house smelled of lilies, Lucas's favorite flower, not mine. A massive banner hung across the grand staircase. Congratulations, Lucas, MBA class of 2024. My heart sank. Of course. It wasn't a birthday party. It was a graduation bash. Mom spotted me from the kitchen. She was wearing a cream silk dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Good, you're here, she said, thrusting a clipboard at me. The caterers are idiots. They're setting up the champagne tower on the wrong table. Go fix it. And Violet, try to stay out of the photos. You look tired. I looked down at my outfit. I was wearing my best work blouse and slacks. I looked professional. But in this house, professional meant staff. I spent the next 4 hours working. I directed the florists. I showed the guests where to put their coats. I even helped unclog a toilet in the guest bathroom because Mom refused to call a plumber on a Saturday. By 5 p.m., the party was in full swing. That's when Lucas arrived. You have to understand, Lucas isn't just spoiled. He's delusional. He believes he's a titan of industry because he managed to pass business school with the help of paid tutors and Dad's connections. We heard the engine before we saw the car. A low, guttural roar that shook the windows. A sleek, blood-red Ferrari Purosang rolled up the driveway. Dad had leased it under the company name, as a graduation gift. Lucas stepped out, wearing a tailored navy suit and sunglasses, even though it was overcast. His friend Brad, a guy who once asked me if I was the maid, slid out of the passenger seat. Check it out. Lucas yelled, slapping the hood of the car. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, baby. Dad rushed out, beaming. Fits you perfectly, son. A car for a CEO. I stood on the porch, holding a tray of empty hors d'oeuvre plates. Lucas walked up the steps, spotted me, and stopped. He looked me up and down, then laughed. Hey, sis. Nice outfit. You look like you're about to audit someone. Brad snickered. Maybe she can audit your tire pressure, Luke. Happy birthday, Lucas, I said, my voice quiet. Oh right, he said, checking his Rolex, the one Dad gave him for high school graduation. It's your birthday too, isn't it? Happy, whatever. Hey, grab me a scotch, would you? Neat. He walked past me like I was furniture. I went to the bar, my hands shaking. I poured the scotch. I wanted to throw it in his face. Instead, I set it on the table and retreated to the corner. Then came the speeches. Dad stood on the raised patio, tapping a spoon against his champagne flute. The crowd of 50 people, Dad's business partners, Mom's country club friends, Lucas's frat brothers, fell silent. Friends, family, Dad began, his chest puffed out. We are gathered here to celebrate excellence. He put a hand on Lucas's shoulder. My son. My heir. He has completed his MBA, and he is ready to take the reins of the Spencer legacy. Applause. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. And to ensure he has the start he deserves, Dad continued, his voice booming, I have a special announcement. He gestured around the expansive garden, at the sprawling colonial house behind us. As many of you know, this property has been in the family for a long time. It belongs to my mother-in-law, Eleanor. He gestured vaguely toward the wheelchair in the shadows. He didn't even look at her. But with her health declining. God bless her. He paused for dramatic effect. We have decided that it is time to liquidate this asset. I froze. Liquidate. Sell. We will be putting the estate on the market next month, Dad announced. And the proceeds, which should be substantial, will go entirely to funding Lucas's new venture capital firm. Cheers erupted. Lucas high-fived Brad. I felt a cold ringing in my ears. Sell the house. Grandma's house. The house she loved. Without thinking, I stepped forward. You can't do that, I said. It wasn't loud, but in the lull of the applause, it cut through the air. Dad turned, annoyed. Excuse me. You can't sell the house, I said, my voice gaining strength. Grandma is still alive. She lives here. Where is she going to go? The guest shifted uncomfortably. Dad's smile turned into a grimace. Violet, he said, his tone warning. This is a business decision. We will move Eleanor to a very nice facility. It's better for her. A facility. I stepped closer. You're kicking her out? To fund Lucas's startup. It's for the future of the family. Dad snapped, losing his cool. Lucas is the future. And what about me? I asked. The question just slipped out. Today is my birthday too. Do I get a say? Does Grandma get a say? Dad laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. You? He looked at the guests, shaking his head as if apologizing for a misbehaving pet. Violet, don't be ridiculous. You're an adult. You have your own life. I'm your daughter, I said. Dad looked me dead in the eye. Technically, he said. But let's be honest, Violet. You've always been distinct. You're not traditional family. You're adopted in spirit. And this asset. This inheritance. It's for real family. For the people who actually carry the name with pride. The silence that followed was suffocating. I saw Linda whisper something to Uncle Robert. I saw Mom look down at her shoes. He had said it. In front of everyone. Not real family. That was the moment. That was the moment the last thread of loyalty I had for him snapped. I looked at Grandma Eleanor. She was watching me. She didn't look sad. She looked ready. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I turned around and walked away. Violet. Get back here. Dad shouted. Don't you dare walk away from me. I kept walking. Past the champagne tower. Past the Ferrari. Out the gate. That was when Grandma met me by the rose bushes. That was when she gave me the envelope. And that was when the storm truly began. The next morning, Sunday, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by the documents. I needed help. I needed someone who spoke this language better than I did. I called Sarah. Sarah was my roommate in college, the only person who knew the truth about my family. She was now a junior associate at a high-powered law firm in Hartford. Violet, it's 7 a.m. on a Sunday, she groaned when she picked up. I have a birth certificate that says I'm not adopted, and a trust deed that says I own a $1.2 million house, I said fast. Silence. Then the sound of bed sheets rustling. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Put on coffee. When Sarah arrived, she read the documents in silence. Her eyes got wider and wider with every page she turned. Holy. She breathed. Violet. Do you realize what this is? I think so, I said. This trust was set up 25 years ago, Sarah said, pointing at the date. 3 days after you were born. Your grandmother played 4D chess while your dad was playing checkers. This is ironclad. It's an irrevocable living trust. It bypasses probate. It bypasses the will. It bypasses everything. She looked up at me, grinning. You don't just own the house, Vi. You own the furniture, the fixtures, the land, the garden, heck, if that Ferrari is parked in the garage, you might have a claim on the tires. But they don't know, I said. Dad thinks he can sell it. He can't sell what he doesn't own, Sarah said. But he's going to try. And when he finds out he can't, he's going to come for me, I finished. My phone rang. It was my cousin, Jessica. I hesitated. Jessica and I had always been okay. Not close, but she wasn't mean like Lucas. I thought maybe I could trust her. I needed to vent. I picked up. Hey, Jess. Violet. Oh my God, are you okay? You left in such a rush last night. Dad and Uncle Richard were furious. I found something, Jess, I whispered. I shouldn't have said it. But I was overwhelmed. Grandma gave me something. Papers. Dad. Dad doesn't own the house. What? Jessica's voice sharpened. What do you mean? It's complicated, I said. But I think everything is about to change. Wow, Jessica said. That's crazy. Are you sure? Maybe you misread it. I have a lawyer looking at it, I said. Okay. Well, be careful, Vi. You know how Uncle Richard gets. Yeah. Thanks, Jess. I hung up, feeling a little better. Big mistake. 2 hours later, there was a pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. It was Mom. She never visited me. Never. She called my apartment the closet. I opened the door. Mom stood there, clutching her Hermes bag, looking flustered. She pushed past me without waiting to be invited. Violet, we need to talk, she said, pacing around my small living room. Your father he's very stressed. The sale of the house is complicated. I imagine it is, I said, standing by the door. He wants to make sure everything goes smoothly for the family, she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a document. He drafted this up this morning. It's just a standard formality. A family unity waiver. It basically says that we all agree to the sale, and we won't contest the distribution of funds to Lucas's company. She held it out to me. Her hand was shaking slightly. My blood ran cold. Jessica. Jessica had told them. She must have called them the second we hung up. Violet has papers. Violet has a lawyer. Dad was scared. He was trying to cut me off before I could strike. I looked at the paper. It was full of legal jargon, but the intent was clear. I, Violet Spencer, waive any and all claims to the Mitchell Spencer estate. If I signed this, the trust might be contested. They could argue I voluntarily gave up my rights. Why do I need to sign this, Mom? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Dad said last night I wasn't real family. Why does the non-family member need to sign off on the assets? Mom's face crumbled. She switched tactics. The guilt trip. Violet, please, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Don't be difficult. You know how hard your father works. This business, it's everything to Lucas. If you don't sign this, investors might get spooked by potential title disputes. Do you want to ruin your brother's future? His future? I asked. What about mine? You guys made me take out loans for college. You forgot my birthday yesterday. We didn't forget, she protested weakly. We were just busy. Look, sign the paper, and Dad says he'll give you $5,000 from the sale. You can pay off a credit card or something. $5,000. Out of a $1.2 million house. It was an insult so big it was almost funny. No, I said. Mom stopped crying instantly. Her eyes narrowed. What? I said no. I'm not signing it. You selfish little. She stopped herself, taking a breath. Your grandmother is confused, Violet. Whatever she gave you, whatever lies she told you, she's senile. If you try to fight us, your father will bury you in legal fees. You have nothing. You are nothing without us. I guess we'll see, I said. I opened the door. Get out, Mom. She stared at me, shocked. I had never kicked her out before. You're making a mistake, she hissed as she walked out. Don't come crawling back when you're homeless. I slammed the door. My legs gave out, and I slid down to the floor. But I wasn't crying. I was dialing Sarah's number. They know, I told her. They tried to get me to sign a waiver. Then we move fast, Sarah said. I got us an appointment with Arthur Sterling. The shark. When? Tomorrow morning. Tell your parents to be there. Tell them it's for the formal reading of the estate. They think Grandma is dying, I said. Let them think what they want, Sarah said. Tomorrow, they find out who actually holds the keys. Monday morning. The office of Arthur Sterling, ESQ. If you don't know who Arthur Sterling is, imagine a lion in a three-piece suit. He costs $800 an hour, and thanks to the trust's provision for legal defense, Grandma was paying for him, not me. The conference room was all glass and mahogany, overlooking the Hartford skyline. My parents and Lucas arrived 10 minutes late. Power move. Dad walked in like he owned the building. He was wearing his deal-closing charcoal suit. Mom was in pearls. Lucas was wearing sunglasses indoors, looking hungover. They stopped when they saw me sitting at the head of the table. Violet. Dad scowled. What are you doing there? Move. That's for the executor. I'm comfortable, thanks, I said. I didn't move. Dad's face turned red, but before he could explode, Arthur Sterling walked in. He didn't shake hands. He just sat down next to me and opened a file. Mr. and Mrs. Spencer, Sterling said, his voice deep and gravelly. Please sit. Who are you? Dad demanded. Where is Martin Cole? He's the family lawyer. Mr. Cole retired, Sterling said. I represent the Eleanor Mitchell Irrevocable Trust. And by extension, the beneficiary. Right, Dad waved his hand dismissively, sitting down. Look, let's make this quick. We have a realtor coming at 2 p.m. to list the house. We just need the formal clearance to transfer the title from Eleanor to me so I can sell it. Lucas leaned forward, spinning his car keys on the table. Yeah, and I need the cash transfer initiated by Friday. I have vendors to pay. I watched them. The arrogance. The absolute certainty that the world revolved around them. Sterling took off his reading glasses. He looked at Dad with a mixture of pity and amusement. Mr. Spencer, Sterling said. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding. You cannot sell the property at 47 Maple Grove Lane. Why not? Dad snapped. If it's about the power of attorney, you cannot sell it, Sterling interrupted, because you do not own it. Nor does Eleanor Mitchell, not anymore. The room went dead silent. What are you talking about? Mom whispered. The property, Sterling said, sliding a document across the table, was placed into a trust 25 years ago. The terms of the trust state that upon the 25th birthday of the beneficiary, the title transfers automatically and immediately to said beneficiary. Dad picked up the paper. His hands were shaking. Beneficiary. Who? Eleanor only has one daughter. Margaret. Read the line, Richard, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was calm, but inside, I was screaming. Dad looked at the document. He squinted. Then his eyes went wide. His face drained of all color, turning a sickly shade of gray. No, he muttered. No. This is a mistake. What does it say, Dad? Lucas asked, annoyed. It says. Dad choked on the words. It says the sole beneficiary is Violet Marie Spencer. Lucas dropped his keys. Clatter. Her. Lucas pointed at me. The adopted kid. That brings me to the second point, Sterling said. He clicked a button on his laptop, and the projector screen behind me lit up. It was my birth certificate. Blow up to 5 feet tall. Mother, Margaret Spencer. Father, Richard Spencer. There is no adoption, Sterling said. Violet is your biological daughter. The adopted in spirit narrative was a fabrication. A lie you told to justify disinheriting a child you simply didn't favor. Mom put her hand over her mouth. She couldn't look at me. This is fraud. Dad slammed his fist on the table, standing up. Eleanor was incompetent. She was manipulated. I'll sue. I'll contest this. You can try, Sterling said coolly. But this trust was notarized, witnessed, and filed 25 years ago. You have been living in that house as guests of the trust. You have never paid rent. You have never paid the mortgage, because there wasn't one. You simply paid utilities and taxes, which, legally speaking, constitutes a tenant relationship. I am not a tenant in my own home. Dad roared. He turned to me, his eyes bulging. You ungrateful, manipulative little snake. You did this. You tricked her. I stood up. I wasn't the little girl at the taco table anymore. I wasn't the teenager crying over a Costco cake. I didn't trick anyone, Dad, I said. Grandma saw you. She saw how you treated me. She knew that if she left the house to you, you'd spend it all on Lucas and leave me with nothing. So she made sure that couldn't happen. We are family. Mom sobbed. Violet, how can you do this to your brother? He needs this money. He's an adult, I said. He has an MBA, right? He can get a job. Just like I did. I can't get a job. Lucas yelled. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a Ferrari to pay for. Not anymore, you don't, I said. Because the money you were counting on. It's mine. I leaned over the table, placing my hands flat on the mahogany. You told me I wasn't real family. You told me I was adopted in spirit. You made me feel worthless for 25 years, so you wouldn't have to feel guilty about neglecting me. I looked at Dad. He seemed to shrink in his expensive suit. Well, Dad. You were right. I'm not your family. Because family protects each other. And now. I'm protecting myself. I turned to Sterling. Give them the notice. Sterling handed Dad a single sheet of paper. This is a notice to vacate, Sterling said. You have 90 days to remove your belongings and vacate the premises. Dad looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. The anger was gone, replaced by pure terror. Violet. He stammered. Sweetheart. You can't be serious. Kick us out. Where will we go? We're your parents. You have 90 days, I repeated. I suggest you start packing. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment I finally took back the control they had stolen from me. Walking out of that conference room felt like walking out of a prison I hadn't realized I was in. But the fallout? It was instant, and it was messy. I didn't go back to the house. I stayed at my apartment, but my phone became a war zone. First came the texts from Lucas. UBTCH, *, you stole my life. Dad is going to have a heart attack, and it's your fault. Then came the texts from Mom. Violet, please pick up. We can work this out. Your father is crying. I've never seen him cry. We love you. We were just confused. Confused. That was the word she used. As if neglecting a child for 2 decades was a momentary lapse in judgment. On day 3 of the 90-day countdown, Dad showed up at my workplace. I work at a logistics firm in downtown. I was at my desk when the receptionist called me. Violet. There's a gentleman here. He says he's your father. He's causing a scene. I walked out to the lobby. Dad was there. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He looked disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot. Violet, he said, rushing toward me. Thank God. Look, we need to talk. The lawyers. Sterling is crazy. You can't listen to him. Dad, you need to leave, I said, conscious of my coworkers watching. I'm willing to compromise, he said, his voice desperate. We can split it. 50-50ths. You keep the house, but you take out a mortgage and give the cash to Lucas. That's fair, right? He's your brother. I stared at him. Even now. Even when he was begging, he was negotiating for Lucas. Why? I asked. Why is it always him? Dad struggled. He's the boy. He carries the name. Violet, you'll get married. You'll change your name. Lucas is the Spencer line. There it was. The archaic, sexist rot at the core of his soul. I'm not giving him a dime, I said loudly. Lucas drives a Ferrari. I drive a 2014 Civic. If he needs money, tell him to sell the car. He can't. Dad shouted. It's a lease. If we break it, the penalties are huge. Not my problem, I said. Security. The guard, a guy named Mike who I brought coffee for every morning, stepped forward. Sir, you need to exit the building. Dad looked at me with pure venom. You're dead to me, Violet. You hear me? You have no father. I haven't had a father since I was 8 years old, I replied. He was escorted out. I went to the bathroom and threw up. Then I washed my face, fixed my makeup, and went back to work. The next week was a blur of legal motions. Dad tried to file an injunction claiming Grandma was mentally incompetent. Sterling crushed it by producing a video Grandma had recorded the day she signed the trust. In the video, Grandma looked at the camera, clear-eyed and sharp. I, Eleanor Mitchell, being of sound mind, leave everything to Violet. Because Richard Spencer is a fool, and I won't let him ruin my granddaughter. The judge threw Dad's case out in 10 minutes. Then the financial reality hit them. Without the house equity, Dad had no collateral. His business investments were actually leveraged debt. He had been counting on selling the house to pay off loans he'd already taken. The repo men came for the Ferrari on a Tuesday. My neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, told me about it. She said Lucas was screaming in the driveway, trying to block the tow truck, while the neighbors watched. He had to be physically restrained by Dad. It was humiliating. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorry for them. I cut off the rest of the family, too. Jessica kept texting me, asking for her side of the story, aka gossip she could spread. I blocked her. I blocked Linda. I blocked Uncle Robert. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. But there was one loose end. The 90 days were almost up. I had to go to the house for the final walkthrough. I pulled up to 47 Maple Grove Lane. The moving truck was there. The house looked sad. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks. I walked inside. The furniture, which belonged to the trust, was still there, but all their personal clutter was gone. The photos of Lucas that used to cover every wall were taken down, leaving pale squares on the faded paint. Mom was in the kitchen packing a box of dishes. When she saw me, she stopped. She looked 10 years older. "We found an apartment," she said quietly. 2 bedrooms. Downtown. It's small. No yard. It's a start, I said. "Violet," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry." I paused. I waited. "I'm sorry we didn't handle the birth certificate better. We should have told you." I laughed. A bitter, sharp sound. "You're sorry you got caught, Mom. You're sorry you lost the house. You're not sorry you treated me like a ghost for 20 years. She looked down. She didn't deny it. "Where is Dad?" "He's in the car," she said. "He refuses to look at you." "Good." "Violet," she asked, looking around the kitchen where she had cooked for 30 years. "What will you do with it?" "The house. I'm going to make it a home," I said. "A real one. Where people are actually welcome." She nodded, picked up her box, and walked out the back door. I stood alone in the empty kitchen. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in this house. I felt like I fit. I walked to the living room window and watched them drive away. Dad's Range Rover was gone, sold to pay legal fees. They were in Mom's sedan, packed to the roof with boxes. They drove down the driveway and turned left, out of my life. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of dust and old lilies. "Okay," I said to the empty room. "Time to redecorate." But the story doesn't end here. Because just as I thought the dust had settled, Grandma gave me one last letter. A letter that explained why. Why Dad hated me so much. Why he was obsessed with Lucas. And that truth. It was darker than the lie. A year. That's how long it's been since the moving truck pulled away from 47 Maple Grove Lane. If you walked into my house today, you wouldn't recognize it. And I don't just mean the furniture. I mean the soul of the place. The first thing I did was hire a painter. I told him to cover every inch of Spencer gray, that cold, sterile color my father loved because he thought it looked like a bank vault, with a warm, creamy dove white. I ripped up the carpets in the hallway. Underneath, I found beautiful, original hardwood floors that my parents had covered up because Lucas complained the wood was too slippery for his socks when he was 12. Every nail I pulled, every wall I painted, felt like an exorcism. I was scrubbing their energy out of the grain of the wood. But the biggest change wasn't the house. It was what happened to the people who used to act like kings inside it. You know, there's a saying, when you trade your integrity for prestige, you lose both. Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor, the one who told me about the repo men taking the Ferrari, became my unexpected best friend during this time. She's the neighborhood watch captain, which is a polite way of saying she knows everyone's business. Every Tuesday, when I put the trash out, she'd lean over the fence with a new update. "Your father," she told me about 3 months after the eviction, "is working at the consultancy firm down on 4th Street. But he's not a partner, Violet. I saw him at the front desk." I checked. She was right. My father, the man who used to scream at waiters if his water wasn't chilled enough, was now working as a greeter and intake specialist for a firm run by men half his age. He was 62, trying to pay rent on an apartment that cost more than he could afford because he refused to live in a poor neighborhood. And Mom? That was the twist I didn't see coming. 6 months after they moved out, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name in handwriting that looked shaky, like someone writing during an earthquake. It was from my mother. It wasn't a demand for money. It wasn't a guilt trip. It was a photocopy of a divorce decree. Margaret Spencer versus Richard Spencer. She had left him. I sat on my new velvet sofa, dark green, a color I loved but was never allowed to have, and read the note attached. Violet, I realized something in the small apartment. When the money was gone, and the house was gone, and the status was gone. I looked at your father, and I didn't see a husband. I saw a bitter, angry old man who blamed everyone but himself. And I realized I had spent 30 years protecting a bully because I liked the house he lived in. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. But I thought you should know, I'm free, too. I didn't call her. I wasn't ready for that. Forgiveness is a heavy door, and I wasn't strong enough to open it yet. But I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not the trash. That was progress. And then, there was Lucas. The golden child. The heir. I actually saw him. In person. It was about 8 months in. I needed to get my Honda serviced at the dealership, not the luxury European import place my family used to go to, but the reliable Toyota dealership on the highway. I was sitting in the waiting area, drinking bad coffee, when I heard a voice I recognized. Look, Mun, the financing is simple. I can get you into this Camry today. I froze. I lowered my magazine. Across the showroom floor, wearing a polo shirt that was slightly too tight, and a name tag that looked brand new, was Lucas. He wasn't driving a Ferrari. He was selling sedans. He looked deflated. The arrogance that used to radiate off him like heat waves was gone. He looked tired. He had gained weight. He was explaining interest rates to a young couple who looked skeptical. I watched him for 5 minutes. I watched my brother, who used to mock me for waiting tables, hustle for a commission check that probably wouldn't cover his old bar tab. He looked up. Our eyes met across the showroom. I expected him to glare. I expected him to flip me off or storm over and cause a scene. He didn't. He just looked at me. Then he looked down at his clipboard, his face turning a deep shade of red, and went back to talking to the couple. Shame. Pure, unadulterated shame. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt nothing. He was just a guy selling cars. He wasn't the monster under my bed anymore. He was just a guy. That was when I knew I was really free. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that allowed me to truly sleep at night, came from Grandma Eleanor. Grandma didn't want to live in the house with me. It's your time, darling, she had said. I need people my own age to cheat at poker with. So I used the income from the trust, which was generating interest now that Dad wasn't draining it, to get her into the Oaks. It's a luxury assisted living facility about 10 minutes away. It has a garden, a library, and staff who treat her like the queen she is. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting in the facility's garden. The hydrangeas were in full bloom, blue and purple heads bobbing in the breeze. Grandma reached into her purse. I have one last thing for you, she said. My stomach tightened. Grandma, no more envelopes. Please. I think I've had enough secrets. This isn't a legal document, Violet, she said softly. It's an explanation. She handed me a folded piece of paper. It looked old. Yellowed at the edges. Your father, she began, pouring tea into her china cup, wasn't born a monster. Monsters are made, usually by other monsters. I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a letter to me. It was an old obituary clipping from a newspaper, dated 45 years ago. Catherine Elizabeth Spencer, age 19. Tragically killed in an automobile accident. Who is Catherine? I asked. Your father's older sister, Grandma said. She was brilliant. Kind. She was the one who raised Richard, really, because their parents were distant. Dad never mentioned a sister, I said. Never. He can't, Grandma said. When Catherine died, your grandfather, Richard's father, didn't cry. He stood at the funeral, looked at Richard, who was 17 and heartbroken, and said. Grandma's voice trembled. She took a breath. He said, "Stop crying, boy. Be grateful it wasn't you. Losing a son is a tragedy. Losing a daughter is just unfortunate. Girls don't carry the name anyway." I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the wind. He said that? He said that, Grandma nodded. And in that moment, Richard learned a terrible lesson. He learned that in his father's world, the world he wanted to belong to, daughters were disposable. Sons were the only thing that mattered. I stared at the obituary. I looked at the grainy photo of a girl who looked hauntingly like me. Same dark eyes. Same chin. He spent his whole life trying to prove he wasn't disposable, Grandma continued. And when you were born a girl, he panicked. He saw you as a failure. Not your failure, Violet. His failure to produce the real asset. So he pushed you away before he could get attached. He invented the adopted in spirit lie to build a wall around his heart. He didn't want to love me, I whispered, realizing the horror of it. Because he was taught that loving a daughter was a waste of investment. Learned worthlessness, Grandma said. That's what the psychologists call it. He inherited a sickness from his father, and instead of curing it, he tried to infect you with it. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was warm. But you didn't catch the sickness, Violet. You broke the fever. I sat there for a long time. For 25 years, I had asked myself, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enough? I looked at the clipping. I thought about the man working at the front desk of a consultancy firm, lonely and bitter. It wasn't about me. It never was. I wasn't the unlovable child. I was just the mirror that reflected his own brokenness. He couldn't look at me because he couldn't stand to look at himself. Does this excuse what he did? I asked Grandma. Absolutely not, she said firmly. Understanding the poison doesn't mean you have to drink it. He is a grown man. He had choices. He chose cruelty. And he is paying the price for that choice. She took the clipping from my hand and tore it in half. Then she tore it again. And again. Until it was just confetti. She threw the pieces into the wind. We watched them scatter over the rose bushes. He's the past, Violet, she said. Catherine is at peace. And you? You are the future. That evening, I drove back to my house. My house. I walked into the living room. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the floor. I had bought a new dining table. That was my big splurge. The old table, the one where I was told I was adopted in spirit, the one where I sat at the far end away from the conversation, was gone. I had chopped it up for firewood. My new table was round. There was no head of the table. No power seat. Just a circle. I ran my hand over the smooth wood. I thought about Lucas selling cars. I thought about Mom in her small apartment. I thought about Dad in his empty office. They were all trapped in the cages they had built for themselves. Cages made of status, of ego, of legacy. I was the only one who was free. I walked to the kitchen and started making dinner. Not for a party. Not for guests. Just for me. I made my favorite pasta. I poured a glass of wine, a bottle I bought because I liked the label, not because it was expensive. I sat down at my round table. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. It was full of possibility. I took a sip of wine and looked at the empty chairs around me. One day, I said aloud to the room. One day, these chairs will be full. But they will be full of people who love me. People who choose to be here. Not hostages of biology. I smiled. And until then, I whispered, I enjoy my own company. It's Sunday again. The morning light is hitting the kitchen counter exactly the way I like it. I can hear the birds singing in the maple tree outside, the tree my father wanted to cut down because the leaves clogged the gutters. I kept the tree. I cleaned the gutters myself. It's a fair trade. Grandma Eleanor is coming over in an hour. We have a routine now. She brings the gossip from the nursing home. Apparently Mr. Henderson was caught sneaking brandy into the bingo hall, and I make the tea. We use the good china. The set with the hand-painted violets. For years, this china was locked in a glass cabinet. Mom used to say, it's for special occasions. It's for when important people come over. Well, Grandma is important. I am important. So we use the china every single week. If a cup breaks, it breaks. It's just a cup. It's not a symbol of my worth. I'm writing this from my laptop, sitting at the round table. A lot of you have asked me in the comments, do you ever feel guilty? Do you ever miss them? I want to answer that honestly. Do I miss having a mother? Yes. I miss the idea of a mother. I miss the mother I saw in movies, the one who brushes your hair and tells you you're beautiful. But I don't miss Margaret Spencer. I don't miss the woman who watched me drown and worried about getting splashed. Do I miss my father? No. I realized that I never actually had a father. I had a manager. I had a critic. I had a landlord. But I didn't have a dad. You can't lose something you never possessed. And guilt. Guilt is a funny thing. It tries to convince you that setting a boundary is an act of aggression. When I kicked them out, when I claimed my inheritance, the voice in my head, my father's voice, screamed that I was being selfish. That I was destroying the family. But I've learned something in the last year. Destroying a lie isn't destruction. It's renovation. My family was a house infested with termites. On the outside, it looked perfect. Fresh paint, manicured lawn. But inside, the foundation was being eaten alive by resentment, favoritism, and misogyny. If I had stayed silent, if I had signed that waiver, the house would have collapsed on top of me eventually. I didn't burn it down. I just refused to stay inside while it fell. I hear a car door slam outside. That's the transport van bringing Grandma. I get up and walk to the front door, the door I painted a bright, cheerful yellow. I open it and there she is. She's wearing a new hat, a ridiculous purple thing with a feather. She's grinning. Violet, she calls out. Mr. Henderson tried to propose to me at breakfast. I told him I'm too rich for him now. I laugh. It's a real laugh. Deep and loud. I walk down the path to help her. The sun is warm on my face. I am Violet Spencer. I am 26 years old. I am the owner of 47 Maple Grove Lane. But more importantly, I am the owner of my own story. I spent a quarter of a century waiting for an invitation to my own life. I thought I had to earn it. I thought I had to be quieter, smaller, more obedient. I was wrong. You don't wait for the invitation. You build the table. You pour the tea. And you decide who gets to sit down. Grandma takes my arm. Ready for tea, darling? Ready, I say. We walk inside together. And for the first time in the history of this house, the front door doesn't just close. It locks out the darkness and it keeps the light in. If you are reading this and you feel that tightness in your chest, that feeling of being the forgotten one, the black sheep, or the adopted in spirit, I want you to listen to me. Your worth is not a currency determined by your family. It is not a stock that goes up or down based on your parents' approval. We are taught that family is everything. We are taught that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes, blood is just a biological accident. The most dangerous lie we are told is that we owe our loyalty to people who abuse us, simply because we share DNA. You do not. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. You have the key. You get to decide who enters your sacred space. If your family brings mud, chaos, and pain into your home, you are allowed to lock the door. That is not cruelty. That is hygiene. It is scary to walk away. It is terrifying to stand up and say, no more. You will feel guilty. You will feel alone. But I promise you, the loneliness of freedom is 1,000 times better than the loneliness of rejection. There is a table waiting for you. Maybe you have to build it yourself, plank by plank. Maybe you have to eat alone for a while. But eventually, you will fill those chairs with people who love you for you, not for the role you play in their fantasy. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to build your own table? Have you ever had to walk away from people you were supposed to love to save yourself? Tell me one lesson you've learned about self-worth in the comments below. Or if this story resonated with you and you're just happy I made it out, drop the word good in the comments. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go live yours.